theater, and who knew jury duty could be so much fun? Welcome to the sheer delight production of You're the Jury, the case of the Steele deal. Now that means you are really the jury. There are pads on your table, there are pencils if you want to make notes. You will get a packet of information duplicating the exhibits at the time you deliberate at the end of the show. Keep in mind that during that time when you deliberate, you will not be able to leave the room. You only have 10 minutes, so you gotta hunker down and do it. Anyway, I wanted to tell you that we're excited to have you here, and we are always looking for new members for the drama club. So if you're interested, we'll have 3, possibly 4 meetings during the summer. Keep watching the MTL clubs under Drama Club for announcements of what we're going to have and where. We'd love to have more members in our group. In fact, there's a song from the Lauren Bacall musical Applause that kind of says it all. Welcome to the theater, to the magic, to the fun, where painted trees and flowers grow and laughter rings fortissimo and tomfoolery is sweetly done. Actors are children playing hide and ego seek. So welcome to the theater, my dears. You'll love it so. It's true. So please, look for those announcements of our meetings and show up and be part of it. Now, a couple of housekeeping things. Number 1, turn these off. Number 2, those of you who are not residents, the washrooms, bathrooms, are out the door you came in and down the hall, and just short of the lobby on the left, there's a short hallway to the bathrooms. And the exits, of course, you can see the exit signs over the doors. If there's an emergency, please use those. Now, each of your tables must select a foreman. So look around at intermission and select someone to be that person who will hand out the packet to anyone who needs to see an exhibit. But the foreman is in charge of tallying the votes at your table and then submitting them to the bailiffs who will come around to collect the votes. Okay, finally now, sit back and imagine that you're in Martinez, California, in a Contra Costa County beautiful courthouse, in one of their wonderful courtrooms where you all obviously love serving jury duty. And I think I even see the witnesses approaching. Is that them? Yes, they're coming. And the attorneys are right behind them with their clients. Thank you for your service.
Hear ye. The court is now in session. Superior Court number 4 of the state of California. The Honorable P.J. Draper presiding. You may be seated.
The plaintiff, Sally Steele Wellington, versus the estate of Clara Steele, defendant. Counsel for the plaintiff, are you ready?
We're ready, Your Honor.
Counsel for the defense, are you ready?
We're ready, Your Honor.
The bailiff will swear in the jury.
Members of the jury, please stand. All members of the jury, please stand. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to consider all of the evidence presented, follow the instructions given, deliberate fairly and impartially, and reach a fair verdict under the penalty of perjury? If so, please respond by saying, I do.
I do.
You may be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will try this case. According to the facts not in dispute, Clara Steele, now deceased, purchased a winning lottery ticket valued at $6 million on June 3rd of 2021. Her twin sister, Sally Steele Wellington, claims that they had an agreement requiring Clara to share her winnings with her. When Sally made a demand for her share, Clara refused her on the grounds that she, Clara, had terminated the agreement before she had ever purchased the winning lottery ticket. On July 4th of 2022, Clara was found dead at the bottom of her steps leading up to her bedroom. She died testate. Her most recent will was dated December 9th of 2021. Clara Steele's estate is the defendant in this court action, represented by its executor, Francis Page. Clara's twin sister, Sally, is the plaintiff. The complaint filed by plaintiff claims damages in the amount of $3 million, precisely 1/2 the value of Clara's winning lottery ticket. Ultimately, there is a single issue of fact which you must resolve. At the time Clara Steele purchased her winning lottery ticket, was she under contractual obligation to share her winnings from the $6 million with her sister, Sally Steele Wellington? Counsel for the plaintiff, you may proceed with your opening statement.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Brad Peters. My colleague Sandy Green and I represent Sally Steele Wellington, the plaintiff in this action. As Judge Draper pointed out, you are the ones who will need to decide whether Clara Steele was under a contractual obligation when she purchased her winning lottery ticket to share her winnings, her $6 million, with her twin sister, Sally Steele Wellington. Now, the evidence will clearly show that, yes, Clara was under a contractual obligation to share her winnings. But in order to make that decision, you will need to reach two preliminary conclusions. First, that prior to Clara's ticket purchase on June 3rd, 2021, Clara and Sally had entered into a valid agreement, a contract that they would share equally in all lottery winnings, regardless of who actually purchased the winning ticket. Second, you must conclude that neither Clara Steele nor Sally Steele Wellington clearly and properly terminated that agreement in accordance with the law prior to the purchase of that winning ticket. Once again, the evidence will clearly support these conclusions. Now, with the court's permission, I would like to show you a simple timeline. By the way, you'll be receiving a copy of this timeline in your information packets that are provided before deliberation on a verdict. Now, don't get overwhelmed. Ladies and gentlemen, there are really two key dates that we need to focus on. On November 28, 2019, Clara and Sally Steele made an agreement to share their future winnings. And on June 3rd of 2021, Clara Steele purchased her winning ticket worth $6 million. Now, I've labeled the time period between these two dates the critical termination period. This is the period of time, the only period of time, during which Clara did have the right to clearly and properly terminate her agreement with Sally. the evidence will show that Clara did not clearly and properly terminate the agreement by directly notifying Sally of her intention to do so. As a result, Clara is contractually obligated to pay Sally her share. Now, her share. What? Oh, one more thing. I want you to listen very, very carefully when the defense presents their case. You'll hear nothing. Because the defense has no case. Just a lot of hearsay to try and get you to be prejudiced against the plaintiff. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Ms. Blake, would you like to make an opening statement for the defense?
Your Honor, we will defer our opening statement until after plaintiff presents its case.
Thank you. In that event, counsel for the plaintiff, will you please proceed with your first witness?
Okay. Plaintiff calls Drew Mason.
Drew Mason, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Please state your name and occupation.
Drew Mason. I'm a paralegal for the law firm of Young, Birch, and Goodman.
And Mr. Mason, what is your relationship to the parties in this case?
My wife, Pat Steele Mason, is a first cousin to the sisters, Sally and Clara.
Now, Mr. Mason, I'm handing you this paper napkin, Plaintiff Exhibit 2P. Do you recognize it?
I do, yes.
And the handwriting on it, do you recognize whose it is?
This is my handwriting, and I remember this napkin and the handwriting as if it were yesterday.
Now, Mr. Mason, for the ears of the court, can you please read aloud exactly what the writing on the napkin says?
It says, "We, the undersigned, as of November 28, 2019, and going forward, agree to share equally in all our lottery tickets winnings, regardless of who purchases the winning ticket. Either sister may terminate this agreement at her convenience. It is signed by Sally Steele Wellington and Clara Steele."
Thank you, Mr. Mason. Now, can you please explain to the court how this agreement between the sisters Steele came to be written on the front of a paper napkin?
Well, the family was together for Thanksgiving at Sally's house, and either Sally or Clara decided that they should plan to make plans for their betting on the front line, and they were constantly playing the lottery, and that was a known fact. So they're constantly collecting lottery tickets. And they decided that all the winnings would be forever.
Your Honor, I object to the witness's answer. It reeks of hearsay. There's been no evidence offered that anyone was sharing anything forever.
Objection sustained. The witness' last answer will be stricken, and the jury will disregard it.
Mr. Mason, who prepared this napkin agreement?
I did.
And why was that?
Well, I'd wanted to go to law school for 1 year. I decided it wasn't for me. But I quickly learned in my contracts class how important it was to have a written contract. And so, between the sweet yams and the turkey dressing, I jotted down the words that I just read a few minutes ago.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Ms. Blake?
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Mason, referring to your napkin agreement, it states that either sister may terminate that agreement at her convenience, but it does not say how the agreement may be terminated. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I'm afraid I didn't think about it all then.
I'm sure that's so. The family probably didn't give you enough time between the sweet yams and the turkey dressing.
Your Honor, I object. Counsel is belittling the witness.
Ms. Blake?
I apologize, Your Honor. Mr. Mason, based on your knowledge of contracts law, is it fair to say that either Clara or Sally could terminate the agreement just by giving some type of notice, either written or non-written, had they decided that they didn't want to share in future lottery winnings? I repeat, written or non-written.
I believe that is fair to say.
So, would it have been permissible for Clara to terminate the contract by giving proper non-written notice during that critical termination period so eloquently defined by Mr. Peters as having occurred between the date of the napkin agreement and the date that Clara won $6 million? Mr. Mason, you don't have to look to Mr. Peters for the answer. You spent a year in law school. I'm sure you can answer the question.
Well, no, Clara did not have to share her winnings with Sally. If Clara had given proper written or non-written notice to Sally within the critical time period.
One final question, Mr. Mason. With your knowledge of contracts law, is it permissible for a party to terminate their contract by words or actions other than, I hereby terminate or I hereby revoke this agreement?
Your Honor, I object. Mr. Mason is not an expert on contract law. He's not even a licensed attorney.
Objection overruled. This witness is yours, Mr. Peters, and he may answer the question.
Well, as far as I know, as a proposition of law, that is true.
So, Mr. Mason, both the law and your napkin agreement permitted Clara to terminate the contract by words or actions other than, I hereby terminate or I hereby revoke this agreement. Is that correct?
Yes, that is my understanding. But it's been over 40 years since I took contract class.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. I have no further questions.
Mr. Mason, you are dismissed. Mr. Peters?
Plaintiff calls Tulip Hurstenberger.
I just want to hand out a few of my business cards. Okay.
Tulip Furstenberger, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do. For heaven's sakes, why wouldn't I?
Please state your name and occupation.
My name is Tulip Hurstenberger. I'm a hairdresser and owner of Tulip's totally upscale salon. And I have two exciting things to talk about our salon. This week and the next week, anybody who's here can get a 10% discount on any...
Ms. Hurstenberger, please just answer his question.
Well, I just have one more thing, I'm sorry. And the other piece of exciting news is that I now do men.
Ms. Hurstenberger, I wonder if you could please...
Mr. Peters, please call me Tulip. Nobody uses my last name. Of course, I could have taken my maiden name when my husband passed away. May he rest in peace. But Klinkenheimer isn't much better.
Okay, Tulip then. Now, Tulip, I would like to refer back to this timeline, Plaintiff Exhibit 1P. You'll note the first date, November 28, 2019, the Thanksgiving dinner during which Sarah and Clara and Sally executed their so-called napkin agreement. June 3rd of 2021 is the date that Clara purchased her winning lottery ticket worth $6 million. Now, the jury will remember from our earlier look at this timeline that the period between these two dates is the critical termination period. The two other dates that I'd like to cover with you, Tulip, are December 11th, 2020, which I've labeled the big fight, and April 1st, 2021, which I've labeled surprise birthday party. Now, before we consider this timeline, I have just a couple of preliminary questions. First, how long have you known the Steele sisters and under what circumstances?
I've been doing their hair for over 25 years, every other week. Sally on Wednesday and Clara on Thursday. Oh, poor Claire's dead. It's just horrible, just horrible. But Sally still comes every other week.
So, is it fair to say that you know Sally well, and you knew Clara well also?
I'm sorry, I missed the last part of that question.
I said, is it fair to say that you know Sally well, and you knew Clara well also?
Oh, yes, that's more than fair. You know, they say there are no secrets in beauty shops, especially juicy ones. Clara more so than Sally would go on and on, especially when she was a bit tipsy.
Thank you, Tulip. Now, I'd like you to take a look back at the timeline, and particularly at December 11th of 2020. That was the day that Clara's dear dogs, Adam and Eve, died. Are you familiar with that incident?
I certainly am, although I couldn't swear to the date. I do remember, though, that vividly, that shortly thereafter, Claire didn't show up for her scheduled appointment, and we had to fit her in 2 days later. She went on and on about the incident, about how her sister ran over her poor dogs. She said she swore she was never going to talk to Sally again.
And what was your reaction to that? Tulip, what was your reaction to that?
Oh, I said, hogwash. How many times have I heard this from both of them? They were always fighting and making up, and sure enough, a week or two later, they were talking to each other, or so I was told.
Now, when you said hogwash, what did Clara say to that?
She said, this time I'm going to let her sweat it out.
This time, I'll let her sweat it out. So, during the trauma of losing her dear dogs, Clara was planning to let Sally sweat it out, intending all along to make up with her at some
Your
point.
Honor, I object. Counsel is putting words in the witness's mouth. Miss Herzenberger cannot know what Miss Steele intended.
I withdraw the question. Now, I direct your attention to April 1st, 2021, the day of the surprise birthday party, again within the critical termination period, and after Clara said that she would let Sally sweat it out. Can you tell the court what happened exactly 1 day before this?
Well, it was a Wednesday, not Clara's regular day. She called in a frenzy, and we had to fit her in.
Now, during that appointment, did Clara say anything about how she and Sally were getting along?
Oh, yes. Once again, she told me that they hadn't been talking for 4 months since Adam and Eve died. But I heard that they, I don't know, but I heard.
Thank you, Tulip. That would be all.
Ms. Blake,
Miss Herzenberger?
excuse me, Ms. Herzenberger, you have not been excused.
Oh, sorry. Do I have to get sworn in again?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Miss Herzenberger?
Tulip.
Tulip. Tulip, you related a conversation that you had with Clara at the beauty salon shortly after her dogs died. You said that Clara swore to you that she would never speak to Sally again. Are you sure that Clara said, this time I'm going to let her sweat it out, referring to her sister?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last part, please?
Tulip, Do you specifically recall Clara saying that she would let her sister sweat it out?
Oh, yes, I do, dear.
Now, is it possible, Tulip, that Clara actually said, "This time I'm set, she's out"?
That's what I said. Sweat it out.
Tulip, do you wear a hearing aid?
Your Honor,
Sit down, Mr. Peters, and answer the question to it.
Well, yes, I do. And I can hear perfectly fine with it. It happens to be one of the best that money can buy.
All right then. When you were having this conversation with Clara, were the blow dryers on in the salon? The ones near you?
I expect so.
Court is in recess.
they've blown the lights again.
All right, Mr. Peters. Miss Blake, I believe you've made your point. Turn that blasted thing off. There's enough hot air in this courtroom already.
All right, thank you. In that case, I have no further questions of this witness.
Can I leave now?
You are excused, Ms. Hurstenberger. Mr. Peters, please call your next witness.
Plaintiff calls Francis Page.
Francis Page, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, under penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and occupation.
Francis Page. I'm an attorney specializing in wills and estate planning and executor to Claire Steele's estate, the defendant in this action.
Now, I hand you this envelope, Plaintiff Exhibit 3P. First, please tell the court to whom it is addressed, whether there is a return address, and the date that it was posted.
It's addressed to Miss Clara Steele, 1502 Zinfandel, Brentwood, California, 94513. The return address is Sally Steele Wellington, 1026 Malbec, Brentwood, California. And the postmark date is February 15th, 2021. I came across the envelope and the contents after Clara died. It was part of her personal effects.
And when you found the envelope, had it already been opened?
Yes, it had.
And what did you find in the envelope?
A folded sheet of stationery with Sally Steele Wellington's name and address printed at the top.
Can you please show the sheet to the court and read aloud what's written on it?
This is the $75 I owe you.
This is the $75 I owe you. So, well before Clara bought her winning lottery ticket, the $6 million ticket, and after Sally accidentally ran over her dogs, and they stopped speaking to one another, supposedly, Sally was still sharing her lottery winnings with
Your
her
Honor,
sister.
I must object. In the first place, there is no evidence that there was really $75 in that envelope. And if there was money in the envelope, there is no evidence that it was the result of anyone's winning lottery ticket. Furthermore, there was no proof at all that Clara accepted the money if it was there.
I agree. Objection sustained. The jury will ignore Mr. Peters' last comments, and they will be stricken from the record.
Just a couple of more questions. This will that you prepared, Plaintiff Exhibit 4P, it was not Clara's first will. Is that correct?
That's correct. Clara's first will was quite simple. She was leaving 50% to her sister Sally and the rest was shared equally between her nephew, Roosevelt, and her niece, Rosalind. The present will leaves 65% to Constance Crowe. I'm sorry, 65% to Rosalind, 10% to Constance Crowe, and 10% to the Trilogy Dog Club. Moreover, 15% is being left to an individual whose name I'm not at liberty to reveal. And $300,000 from the top is being held in a trust for Cain and Abel, Claire's two schnauzers, Adam and Eve's offspring.
And this Trilogy Dog Club, does it have a director?
Flem Richards.
Flem Richards. And the trustee of the $300,000 for Cain and Abel, who would that be?
Flem Richards.
Flem Richards again. And this Flem Richards, was he in attendance when Clara executed this new will?
Yes, he and Rosalind were witnesses to the will. And, oh yes, Clara, of course, was there.
How convenient for them. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Blake? Your Honor, thank you. Ms. Page, apart from wanting to take care of her dogs and provide for the Trilogy Dog Club, did Clara tell you why she was taking both her sister Sally and her nephew Roosevelt out of her will?
She certainly did. She insisted that I include a statement in the will, making it clear that they would be receiving nothing.
Yes, but can you please relate to the court the reasons that Clara gave you for disinheriting both her sister and her nephew?
Well, with respect to Sally, it was because of the dog incident. And because Sally was so obnoxious. And again, she changed the will after Adam and Eve died.
And Roosevelt?
Well, that's simple. She was seething with anger to know that her own nephew was trying to swindle $500,000 from her. And he had a Ponzi scheme that he was trying to get her to invest in.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
You are dismissed, Ms. Page. Please call your next witness, Mr. Peters.
We call Sally Steele Wellington to the stand.
Sally Steele Wellington, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, under penalty of perjury?
I certainly do.
Please state your name and occupation.
My name is Sally Steele Wellington, and I'm a retired real estate broker.
Mrs. Wellington, first of all, may I express our sincere condolences over the loss of your sister. The two of you were very close, were you not?
Very close. Like two queens in a deck. She was my older sister, you know. 3 minutes and 27 seconds to be exact. And I always looked up to her. And like most siblings, even twins, we fought. Sometimes like cats and... well, like cats. But we always made up, and we always shared our lottery tickets.
Excellent. Let's talk about those lottery tickets. So, both Clara and you bought lottery tickets on a regular basis, and you always shared the winnings?
Yes, that was our big vice.
And when did that first start?
Well, as soon as the lottery tickets became available, whenever that was, we started purchasing them and sharing the winnings 50-50. And as far as I was concerned, that lasted till the dear sister of mine tripped over those damn dogs of hers at the top of the stairs and was taken from us.
Now, Mrs. Wellington, I would like to show you this timeline that the court has viewed previously, and I would like you and the court to zero in on 4 different dates. First, you'll note the date, November 28th of 2019, the day that you and Clara executed the so-called napkin agreement. Second, December 11th, 2020, the big fight. Third, February 15th, 2021, the date posted on the envelope entered into evidence earlier. And fourth, June 3rd of 2021, the day of your sister's big win. Now, I encourage you and the court to keep in mind that the critical termination period encompasses all 4 of these dates. But right now, I'd like you to focus your attention on the big fight. Can you tell us all about it?
Oh, it was a dreadful day. I was carefully backing out of Claire's driveway. Slowly, I might add. Making sure no cars were coming, because the speeders that fly by on Zinfandel. When all of a sudden, apparently Adam and Eve ran out behind my car and I ran over them. The poor things.
Was your sister upset?
My, well, yes, wouldn't you be? Actually, she was hysterical. And for the longest time, she blamed me. It was the longest period of time that Clara refused to talk to me.
So when did you talk to your sister again?
Well, I have no doubt this busybody, nosy neighbor of mine, Connie Crow, egged her on. Connie hated me, and she made it very clear. Flynn Richards, he was no better. All he wanted was her money.
So when did you talk to your sister again?
Well, at the surprise birthday party, the one on they had it April 1st, 2021, the one that Pat threw for us.
Now, tell us about this envelope and its contents that Frances Page found amongst your sister Clara's effects. Did you send it to her?
Of course I sent it to her. Why wouldn't I have?
But Frances Page testified that
Well, several days before, I had won a lottery ticket of my own for $150, and I sent $75 in that envelope because it was her share of the winnings.
But Frances Page testified that there was no money in the envelope.
I don't care what Frances Page testified to or what she didn't find. I sent along $75, and Clara acknowledged it.
So, you sent Clara her share of your lottery winnings, which she obviously opened and accepted, and less than 6 weeks later, the two of you were together at the surprise birthday party. Did she say anything about receiving her share?
Of course, she thanked me.
She thanked you. So, during the critical termination period, she accepted and thanked you for her share of your winning lottery ticket. Now, Mrs. Wellington, this is very important. From the time that you and your sister executed the napkin agreement to the day of her big win and the $6 million ticket, did Clara Steele ever communicate to you directly her desire to terminate your lottery agreement? And remember, you're under oath.
Never. I swear to it. Never.
She did not terminate the agreement when you accidentally ran over her dogs.
No, she certainly did not.
I have no further questions.
Ms. Blake, cross-examine.
Thank you, Your Honor. Miss Wellington, have you ever had pets like dogs, for example?
No, I have not.
Do you even like dogs?
Not particularly.
So you weren't particularly fond of your sister's dogs?
No, and they didn't like me either. The feeling was mutual.
Connie Crow, Clara's neighbor, you didn't like her either. In fact, you said just a few minutes ago that she was a nosy busybody who was egging Clara on. What did you mean by that?
I meant that she continued to make a mountain out of a molehill. She wouldn't let Clara forget that I was the one that was responsible for the death of her dogs. And I wasn't. It was an accident. And besides, Connie was just jealous of our close relationship.
Mrs. Wellington, you indicated that at the birthday party, Clara thanked you for the money that you sent her that represented her share of your winning lottery ticket. Did she thank you in front of anybody else? In front of any of the other guests in attendance, for instance?
No. As I recall, we were in the hallway when she whispered her thank you. just after she kissed me on the cheek and wished me a happy birthday.
And after Clara won the $6 million, did she offer to share it with you?
You know very well she didn't, Miss Blake. I was out of town when Clara learned that she had won. And when I found out from Roosevelt that she was not planning on sharing it with me, I demanded my rightful half. I even waved the agreement under her nose. But by then, I'm sure that Connie Crow and Flem Richards had already convinced her not to honor our deal, our legal agreement that Clara never terminated before she won that money.
That was the second time you mentioned Flem Richards?
Yes, Flem Richards. Clara never admitted it, but I know that they were having a mysterious affair. And he was 10 years younger. Can you imagine? Shameful.
Mrs. Wellington, do you know as a matter of fact that Connie Crow and Flem Richards conspired to convince Clara not to honor your deal, as you call it?
Well, no, but it was obvious to me.
Well, Mrs. Wellington, that is far short of being a matter of fact. Thank you. I have no further questions.
You are excused, Mrs. Wellington. Mr. Peters, I believe you are up.
Yes, Your Honor. I call Roosevelt Wellington II to the stand.
Roosevelt Wellington, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Please state your name and occupation.
I'm Roosevelt Steele Wellington II. I'm a stockbroker and the stepson of Sally Steele Wellington.
Now, Mr. Wellington, are you familiar with your stepmother's lottery arrangement with your Aunt Clara?
Yes, of course. As a matter of fact, my stepmother and I have an identical arrangement. Any lottery winnings either one of us receive will share equally with the other.
Excellent. Now, Mr. Wellington, by now I'm sure you're aware about the Thanksgiving dinner where your aunt and stepmother executed the napkin agreement. In fact, it's my understanding that you were actually in attendance at that dinner. Am I correct on both counts?
You are. At that Thanksgiving dinner, I was seating immediately to Aunt Clara's left. She declared at the table that she and Mother would share their winnings until death do us part. Those were her exact words.
Until death do us part. Powerful words, Mr. Wellington. Do you have any other instances where your Aunt Clara made similar proclamations?
As a matter of fact, I do.
Please, continue.
It was at the 75th birthday party that Pattinger threw for my stepmother and Aunt Clara. Before Aunt Clara won the $6 million, I happened to catch her alone in my study, thumbing through my books. I asked her if she and my stepmother had made up. She nodded, said yes, we're sisters, and sisters eventually do make up. I told her I was relieved, and that my stepmother would be too, since she was afraid she would only have me to share lottery winnings with. Oh, and then Aunt Clara said, well, that will never change.
Very enlightening. I have no further questions.
Ms. Blake, you may cross-examine the witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Wellington, a few minutes ago you said, and I quote, "My stepmother and I had an identical agreement. Any lottery winnings either of us received, we shared equally with the other." How long has that arrangement been in effect, and is it still in effect?
Well, for as long as I can remember, yes, it's still in effect.
Well, that means that you, Mr. Wellington, stand to receive $1.5 million, half of your stepmother's share, should she prevail in this civil action. That, sir, is surely a powerful motive to see things your way.
Your Honor, counsel is harassing and disparaging the witness. I request that her last comments be stricken from the record.
I agree, Mr. Peters. Objection sustained. The comments are so stricken and the jury will disregard them. Continue, Ms. Blake. but do be careful.
My apologies, Your Honor. Mr. Wellington, what is your relationship with Vincent Scarpatelli, also known as Vinny the Scorpion Scarpatelli?
Well, he's a business associate, a client of my brokerage firm.
Now, Mr. Wellington, isn't it true that Vinny the Scorpion is your bookie and has been for many years?
He had been my bookie in the past, but no longer. I attend Gamblers Anonymous now, and I'm no longer...
But you are in debt to the Scorpion for an amount in excess of $175,000 as a result of betting losses. Isn't that correct?
Yes, it is, but that has nothing to do with my testimony.
Isn't it also true that with Mr. Scarpatelli's financial backing, you created a Ponzi scheme? A Ponzi scheme that your Aunt Clara almost invested in. A Ponzi scheme that she discovered. A Ponzi scheme that she threatened to take to the authorities if you did not promise to dismantle it.
Your Honor.
Sit down, Mr. Peters. Answer the question, Mr. Wellington.
It wasn't a Ponzi scheme. It was a sophisticated investment opportunity.
Was it an entirely legal, sophisticated investment opportunity?
Yes, of course. As in any sophisticated investment opportunity, the authorities, including the Securities and Exchange Commission,
Thank you,
are
Mr.
looking into it at the present time, but I'm absolutely confident there will
Thank
be
you,
no
Mr.
wrongdoing.
Wellington. Thank you. That will be all.
You are excused, Mr. Wellington. Mr. Peters?
Your Honor, plaintiff rests.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. We shall recess at this time. Counsel for the defense, please plan to make your opening statement as soon as we reconvene.
All rise. The court is now in 15-minute recess. Please remain standing until all parties exit. All rise. Hear ye, hear ye. The court is now in session. Superior Court number 4 of the state of California. The Honorable P.J. Draper presiding. You may be seated.
Counsel for the defense, you may present your opening statement.
Your Honor, members of the jury, my name is Grace Harris. My colleague, Ms. Blake, and I represent the estate of Clara Steele. Plaintiff's counsel, according to his opening statement, said that evidence would establish a written agreement between Clara Steele and her twin sister Sally. I agree. The question, however, is whether that agreement was in effect when Clara won $6 million as a result of buying a lottery ticket on June 3rd, 2021. By the time you hear all the evidence, ladies and gentlemen, there will be absolutely no doubt as to your conclusion, which is that Clara Steele, through her words and actions, gave notice to Sally Steele Wellington of her desire to terminate the lottery sharing agreement between them. And you will also find that that notice was given during what has been clearly defined as the critical termination period. Please remember, ladies and gentlemen, that while the law of contracts clearly requires Clara's notification to be unequivocal in words and in actions, it did not require Clara to say to Sally specifically, I hereby terminate or revoke the agreement. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You heard that correctly. Clara could terminate her agreement with Sally without saying the words terminate or revoke. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Ms. Harris, please call your first witness.
We call Constance Crowe to the witness stand, Your Honor.
Constance Crowe, please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, under the penalty of perjury.
Absolutely.
Please state your name and occupation.
My name is Constance Crowe. I am a semi-retired mother and a part-time operator of a boarding home. I say that only because my 5 grown children seem to think they can move in and out of their whim, as if I had nothing better to do than take care of them.
You must be a very caring mother, Mrs. Crowe. However, the court would like to know a little bit about your relationship with Clara Steele. Can you help us with that?
I sure can. We've been neighbors for over 20 years.
And were the two of you very close throughout those years?
Oh, as close as 2 people can be who share the same birthday. You see, I was an April Fool's baby also. We recognized that we had the same birthday by being neighbors for so long. And boy, did we celebrate. And in our state of stupor, we pronounced ourselves connected for life.
Thank you, Mrs. Crowe. I would like to now turn your attention to the day that Clara's dogs, Adam and Eve, died. Do you know anything about that incident?
I sure do. I was there when it happened. It was so traumatic. Sarah loved those dogs. I think besides me, they were the happiest people she saw on a daily basis.
Mrs. Crowe, can you relate to the court exactly what you observed that day?
Well, yes, certainly I can. I was in Clara's kitchen, helping the sisters sort through a bag of apples that Sally brought over earlier. When Sally realized she was late for an appointment, she hurried out, leaving the front door wide open. And as she raced to her car, the dogs followed at her heels. Before Clara and I could do anything, the dogs ran behind Sally's car, and she ran over them. Oh, those poor things.
Well, according to Miss Wellington's testimony, she was carefully backing out of Clara's driveway, going slowly, making sure there were no cars coming, when all of a sudden Adam and Eve ran behind her car, and she ran over them.
Well, I guess it may have been an accident. Though sometimes I wonder, considering how much Sally hated those dogs.
Your Honor, Mrs. Crowe, please stick to the facts. Keep your opinions to yourself.
I'm so sorry, Your Honor. Well, what I meant to say was, I guess it was an accident. But for Sally to say that she was carefully and slowly backing out of that driveway, it's a bone-faced lie for you to
Stay down. And you too, Mrs. Wellington.
Mrs. Crowe, without leaving the witness chair, can you tell the court what happened next? That is, after the 3 of you discovered that Adam and Eve were no longer alive.
Well, Clara was devastated. We both were. But Sally just stood there looking at her watch, as if she had run over a bag of those apples.
Your Honor, Mrs. Crowe, I am not going to warn you again unless asked. Keep your opinions to yourself. And Miss Harris, kindly control your witness.
I apologize, Your Honor. Mrs. Crowe, Please tell the court what happened next and just stick to the facts, no opinions.
Well, Sally just stood there, looking at her watch, as if she wanted to leave. Do you know she never even said she was sorry? She showed absolutely no remorse.
Mrs. Wellington and Ms. Harris, control your witness.
Mrs. Crowe, please, just the facts.
Well, when Sally didn't say she was sorry, Clara went to pieces. She was so hysterical, she was screaming at Sally to leave.
Mrs. Crowe, did Clara say anything else as she demanded that her sister leave?
Yes, she did. She asked her sister, told her that she never wanted to see her again, ever. And then she said, "We are no longer sisters. Blood is not thicker than insensitivity. I want no further dealings with you, ever."
I want no further dealings with you, ever. And how did Sally respond to that?
Sally just jumped in her car. And as she was driving away, I heard her tell poor Clara, "You should have married a man instead of those schnauzers."
Thank you, Mrs. Crowe. I have no further questions.
You may cross-examine Ms. Green.
Mrs. Crowe, those words you claim you heard Clara scream when she was hysterical, where were you when you heard those words?
Well, I was in the kitchen. When Sally started screaming, or Clara started screaming at Sally, I felt like I was an intruder. So I left them alone on the front porch.
Oh, so once you were in the kitchen, isn't it true that you were more than 50 feet away from her? In fact, there's a kitchen wall and a front porch between you.
Well, yes, that's true, but I heard them nonetheless. You see, the kitchen window
Mrs.
was
Crowe,
wide open.
before she won the lottery, that is within the critical termination period, but after the argument that she had with Sally, did you ever hear Clara say to you, or to anyone else for that matter, that she terminated or revoked the lottery sharing agreement with Sally, or that she wanted to?
No, but no further dealings means the same thing, Miss Green.
So your answer is, you never heard Clara say that she terminated or revoked the lottery sharing agreement. That's because she never terminated or revoked the agreement, did she?
Your Honor, counsel is harassing the witness.
Okay. Well, let's go on. I just have one more question for you. Is it true, it's true that Clara Steele left you 10% of her estate?
Well, yes, I'm well aware of that, Miss Green. But fortunately, my ex-husband was quite wealthy. I have no need for Clara's money. In fact, I've already pledged it away to 4 or 5 several worthy causes. And if you think I'm shading the truth, that wouldn't make sense, will it, Miss Green?
I have no further questions.
You are dismissed, Mrs. Crowe.
Thank
Ms. Harris.
The defense calls Rosalind Wellington to the stand.
Rosalind Roosevelt, please raise your right hand. Right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, under penalty of perjury?
Yeah, sure.
Please state your name and occupation.
Rosalind Wellington. I'm unemployed. at the moment.
Miss Wellington, inasmuch as there have been 2 other Wellingtons who have sat in that witness chair, may I call you Rosalind?
That's cool.
Rosalind, Sally Steele Wellington is your stepmother and Clara Steele was your step-aunt. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And Rosalind, you were at a Thanksgiving dinner in which the infamous napkin agreement was executed?
Yeah, indeed.
And at that same Thanksgiving dinner, Roosevelt testified that Clara had declared that she and your stepmother would share the lottery winnings, and I quote, "till death do us part," end quote. Is that your recollection?
Well, I certainly heard the quote. But my dear brother Roosevelt is dreadfully mistaken, because my stepmother uttered that statement, not my Aunt Clara. And I would swear to that.
Now, Rosalind, did your Aunt Clara ever say anything to you about why she chose to execute a new will?
Yeah,
Which was what?
she said she didn't want her sister or her good-for-nothing nephew Roosevelt getting a hold of her lottery winnings, or her money for that matter, but especially not the $6 million that she won.
Now, you and Flem Richards were in attendance when Clara executed her new will?
Yeah, we were witnesses.
And did Flem Richards ever indicate to you how he felt about Sally sharing in Clara's big lottery win?
Oh, he was adamant that she not share any of it because Sally had been so demanding. And he was quite vocal about that.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Ms. Green?
Sit down, Miss Wellington.
I've got the munchies.
Later.
You were very close to your Aunt Clara, is that correct?
Yeah, I was close to my Aunt Clara.
And after the dogs died, but before she won the big lottery, were you around her much?
Yeah.
In all that time, did you ever hear your Aunt Clara say that she revoked or wanted to revoke or terminate the agreement that she had with her sister to share winning lottery tickets?
Well, not in so many words.
Well, what about in a few words? Did you ever hear your Aunt Clara say that she wanted to terminate or revoke the lottery sharing agreement in a few words?
No, but her actions show
But I
me
didn't ask
that.
about her actions. I asked about her words. And the answer is no. Just a few more questions, Rosalind. Should this jury conclude that your stepmother is entitled to 1/2 of the winning lottery, how much of your inheritance would you lose based upon your Aunt Clara's last will?
65%.
65% of $3 million is not small change. That's almost $2 million. Now, one final question. Isn't it true that you and your stepmother don't get along? You'd be happy to see her lose this case?
The relevancy, Your Honor. I object to the question and the disparaging comments.
Motive to color the truth, Your Honor.
The disparaging comments will be stricken and ignored. Otherwise, objection overruled. Please answer the question, Ms. Wellington. What was the question?
Isn't it true that you and your stepmother don't get along? Would you be happy to see her lose this case?
No, we don't get along. But that has nothing to do with my testimony.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Witness is excused. Ms. Harris?
Your Honor, I have here Defense Exhibit 1D, which is an excerpt of Clara Steele's deposition taken during the discovery period of this case. Having received approval from Plaintiff's Counsel, I would like to play this audio recording of this particular excerpt for you now.
Please do so, Ms. Harris.
Now, Ms. Steele, earlier in this deposition, you acknowledged that you and your sister executed the so-called napkin agreement on Thanksgiving Day 2019. Is that correct?
Yes, it is correct.
And at any time prior to winning $6 million, did you in fact say to Sally that you wished to terminate or revoke that agreement using either of those words?
No, Mr. Adams, you know very well I did not use those words, or you would not have asked me the question, and we probably would not be here today. But
no buts, Ms. Steele.
Mr. Adams, are you going to let me explain how I did terminate the agreement? Or do you want to be surprised when I actually take the stand?
Please, be my guest, Ms. Steele.
Okay, I'll try. I was at home separating the good apples from the apples that Sally had brought over. My neighbor, Connie Crow, was there also. Sally remembered an appointment. She raced out of the house, leaving the front door wide open behind her. Adam and Eve, my children, Mr. Adams, can you understand that? Followed her out. And in a rush to leave, she ran over them. But she was not in the least bit remorseful. It was as she had ran over a couple of apples and stayed in the driveway.
But Miss Steele.
Please don't interrupt me again, Mr. Adams. You asked how I terminated our agreement. I'm going to tell you. I was so upset with my sister. These were my exact words. Sally Steele Wellington, I never want to see you again. We are no longer sisters. Blood is not thicker than your insensitivity. I will have no further dealings with you ever.
Let me fast forward to a conversation you had with Tulip Kirstenberger, your hairdresser. According to Tulip's deposition, when you said you would never talk to Sally again, Tulip said hogwash. And you said, this time, I'll let her sweat it out. Clearly meaning, it seems to me, that you had no intention of breaking off with Sally. Not permanently.
Oh, Mr. Adams, I remember that conversation quite well. I did not say to Tulip, this time I will let her sweat it out. What I did say was, this time I'm set. She's out. And I meant every word of it.
Since the big fight, has there been any further communication with your sister?
Oh, well, only at that birthday party. And I would not have gone if I had known she was going to be there.
And I quote, I'm set, she's out. Your Honor, that concludes the excerpt of Clara Steele's deposition.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Does the defense rest?
No, Your Honor, we have two more witnesses to call. The first one is a Mr. Vincent Scarpatelli.
Your Honor, we object to this witness. Vincent Scarpatelli is not on the defense witness list.
Counselors, please approach the bench. Please step back. The objection is overruled. Mr. Scarpatelli will be allowed to testify.
Vincent Scarpatelli, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, under penalty of perjury?
You bet I do.
Please state your name and occupation.
Vinny Scarpatelli. You might say I'm a financial go-between.
testify to the court a little bit about your relationship with Clara Steele prior to her death?
In a word or two, we was friends. Close friends.
What? Liar! Liar, liar, pants on fire!
Why,
Clara
sir?
was my love, not yours!
Excuse me, sir, you can't just come in here and disrupt our proceedings. Who do you think you are?
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I'm Flem Richards, and I cannot stand to hear this man
Well,
lie
sit down,
about
Mr. Richards,
our
or I'll have you
relationship.
removed.
So, this is it. Good!
Officers, remove Mr. Richards immediately. Order,
You're still
order in the Where were we, Mrs. Harris?
Oh, yes, Your Honor.
You know, I've seen a lot of action, Your Honor, but that felt really got me.
Mr. Scarpatelli, please. This is highly unusual, but please sit down now.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you quite done?
No.
Mr. Scarpatelli, you just told the court that you and Clara Steele were close friends. How did that come about?
Okay, hon. You want to know about Clara and me? Well, my used-to-be friend and client, one Roosevelt, not so Wellington, came up with this here Ponzi scheme and tried it out on his own aunt. Can you imagine that? His own aunt. So, I warned her. And after that, we became, how shall I say, extremely close friends.
Can you tell the court precisely why you're here with us today?
Because one night, maybe about 9:30, I snuck into Clara's place without the neighbors knowing, which was easy, since it was after 9 o'clock. All the critters in that neighborhood had already crept into their cribs for the night. Besides, I parked the Harley down the street. Anyway, the two of us were upstairs in the study when Sally came pounding at the front door. I stayed upstairs and hid in the study, and I could hear the two of them fighting. This was after Clara had won the big kahunas, and Sally was demanding her share.
Mr. Scarpatelli, could you hear what the two of them were saying to one another?
Of course I could hear. I ain't deaf and dumb, you know. Well, at least not deaf. Sally was demanding her share, and Clara kept saying she ended that agreement the day Sally ran over those schnauzers of hers.
And how did Sally respond to that?
She said she knew Clara ended that agreement, and then she screamed she shouldn't have.
She knew she ended the agreement, but she screamed she shouldn't have. Thank you, Mr. Scarpatelli. I have no further questions.
Ms. Green?
Mr. Scarpatelli, isn't it true that you are the recipient of Clara's will to the tune of 15%?
You are right on, hon. But if it had not been for me, most of Miss Clara's money would have gone down the drain in Roosevelt's so-called sophisticated investment plan.
Nevertheless, you stand to gain $450,000 just by telling the court here some cockamamie story about eavesdropping on a conversation that was heard when you were upstairs in what you call Clara's study, but was her bedroom? Is that correct?
Please, Miss Green, keep your derogatory thoughts to yourself.
This conversation that you overheard was being held downstairs, and you were upstairs in her bed. I have no further questions.
You are dismissed, Mr. Scarpatelli. Ms. Harris, please call your final witness.
Your Honor, our final witness was Clem Richards, but he no longer qualifies to testify. The defense rests.
Thank you. Counselor for the plaintiff, you may now make your closing statement to the jury.
Ladies and gentlemen, the issue you must grapple with is this. Did Clara Steele properly terminate the napkin agreement before winning the $6 million lottery that she would have to share with her sister? Now, the defense has stated that Clara did not need to say, "I hereby terminate or revoke the agreement." And although it is true that she did not have to use those exact words to terminate the agreement with her sister, she did have to be clear that she was terminating the agreement with her sister to terminate all future lottery winnings. Now, based upon the testimonies we heard today, she did not. So let's just recap. Connie Crow, a meddling neighbor, claimed to hear a conversation that was more than 50 feet away, with a wall and a porch between them. And consider, too, that this was on Zinfandel, which is known to be a busy and noisy street. Rosalind Russell admitted in court she does not get along with her stepmother. Was there any bias in her testimony? Well, remember, she stands to gain almost $2 million should the jury decide in favor of the estate. Then the defense brings a known bookie to the stand who will earn $450,000 if you believe that he overheard a conversation that was being held downstairs in the front of the house. Oh, while he was upstairs in the back of the house, hiding in Clara's bedroom. Really? Well, Clem Richards was not able to testify, but we know that he stands today to be in control of $600,000 should the jury decide in favor of the estate. After Clara won the big lottery, and this was after the critical termination point, Rosalind, Vinnie, and Flynn were the ones who were closest to her. They were the ones who had the most influence on her, and they are the ones who have the most to gain. We heard in Clara's deposition that she did not want to have anything more to do with her sister. But we contend that not having a sisterly relationship does not terminate a legally binding agreement. Ladies and gentlemen, we ask that you give Sally Steele Wellington her half of Clara Steele's $6 million lottery. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Counselor for the defense, you may now make your closing statement.
Ladies and gentlemen, the question you must decide is whether Clara Steele terminated her agreement with Sally prior to winning the $6 million lottery ticket, thereby negating her responsibility of having to share her winnings with Sally. The $75 that Sally said she sent to Clara, where's the evidence that it was from a lottery winning? And think about it, ladies and gentlemen. Who will gain the most financially by winning this case? Now, it is true that no one in this courtroom has heard anyone testify saying that they've heard Clara say to Sally specifically, I hereby terminate or revoke the agreement. But that doesn't mean that Clara did not properly terminate the agreement, because she did. Vinnie Scarpatelli testified under oath that Sally screamed at Clara she knew she ended the agreement, but she shouldn't have. Rosalind Wellington also testified under oath that Clara told her she excluded Roosevelt and Sally from her latest will because she didn't want them to get a hold of her money, but especially not the $6 million lottery winnings. Connie Crow and Clara Steele both swore under oath that after Sally ran over Adam and Eve, Clara said to her, "We are no longer sisters. Blood is not thicker than insensitivity. I want no further dealings with you ever. I want no further dealings with you ever." Clearly, ladies and gentlemen, one of those so-called dealings was the agreement between Sally and Clara to share the lottery winnings. What could have been more unequivocal than that? Accordingly, I submit that Sally Steele Wellington has absolutely no legal right to one half of Clara Steele's $6 million lottery ticket. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I shall now ask you to consider your verdict carefully, omitting any and all personal prejudices and sympathies. In order to render a verdict in favor of one party or the other, a majority of you must be in agreement. With regards to the plaintiff's claim that Sally Steele Wellington is the rightful owner of one half the $6 million lottery ticket purchased by Clara Steele, you must answer the following question. At the time Clara Steele purchased her winning lottery ticket, was she, Clara, under contractual obligation to share her winnings from the $6 million with her sister, Sally Steele Wellington? Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, does the evidence presented here today in its entirety support one of the parties to a larger extent than the other? If so, that one party has a preponderance of evidence on its side and must, as a matter of law, prevail in this lawsuit. Now, please remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is a civil suit, not a criminal proceeding where guilt must be established beyond a reasonable doubt. Thank you for your service in this case. Bailiff?
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will now deliberate amongst yourselves. After 10 minutes, your foreman will ask for a show of hands whether you find for the defendant, Clara Steele's estate, or the plaintiff, Sally Steele Wellington. My officers and I will collect your verdict from your foreman. The court reminds the jury that you are now sequestered and may not leave the jury room until you have reached a verdict. Please remain seated while the parties exit.
Court will stand in recess for the purpose of deliberation and will reconvene in 10 minutes.
Court is in session. Superior Court number 4, the State of California. The Honorable P.J. Draper presiding. Please be seated.
Court is back in session. Bailiff, has the jury rendered a verdict?
Yes, Your Honor, they have.
Will the defense and the plaintiff please stand? The jury has found in favor of the plaintiff, Sally Steele Wellington, which is $3 billion, one-half the value of Clara Steele's winning lottery ticket. Court is adjourned.